Welcome to Everyday Buddhism, making every day better by applying the proven tools found in Buddhist concepts. Welcome to a special bonus re-release of episode 26. That's right, I said episode 26 of Everyday Buddhism, Making Every Day Better, titled Why Sangha? Bringing Buddhism to Life. Back in April of 2019, I released this episode to announce the launch of our Everyday Sangha. I'm re-releasing it today as a special episode in a bow of gratitude to the Sangha, which has grown into a wonderful community and family. As a celebration of the Sangha and the 16 Sangha members who are going for refuge and receiving Dharma names in the non-sectarian Mahayana lineage of Bright Dawn Buddhism and the Kubose Dharma Legacy, this celebration, this refuge ceremony will be happening this Saturday, June 1st, in a special TiSarana Ceremony, where those 16 will officially take refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. This re-release of the episode is the first episode I talked about the three treasures, or the three jewels, or the Triple Gem of Buddhism. So congratulations to those 16 taking refuge, and a huge thank you to the Everyday Sangha for being such a special group. And now to the episode, Why Sangha? Bringing Buddhism to Life. When I first got seriously interested in Buddhism, beyond just like reading, what they call the book Buddhist, where you have all the books piled up on your nightstand, I was a book Buddhist for many, many years, but then I began getting serious about, how do I take this beyond reading, take this beyond studying a philosophy? So when I got that interest and when I thought I should, put it into my life, do something, I was still more connected with the first two treasures, as something lasting and permanent I could take refuge in. The three jewels are supposedly the three things you can count on in life, the things that are permanent and lasting, the things you can take refuge in. There's the Buddha, as the teacher Shakyamuni, who lived 2,500 some years ago. And then there's Buddha nature, which is the Buddha or wisdom inside of us that, at that time I wasn't sure I had connected with, and still it happens on occasion. And then the Dharma, the teachings, the practices, and the wisdom or understanding the actual Buddha awakened to, the truth of things as they are. These things I knew I could take refuge in. But the Sangha wasn't something I initially connected to. The term Sangha had traditionally referred to, monastics and arhats that we as lay Buddhists could also take refuge in. But now in the West, where Sangha really has come to mean any community of Buddhist practitioners generally, both, monastic and lay, Buddhists here also use the word to describe even a specific community or a group. You hear them say, my Sangha, meaning the Buddhist community to which I belong. It's like my church. But from either the traditional perspective or the more recent current perspective, I was not sure about Sangha back when I started getting serious in the 1990s. Was the Sangha really a treasure in today's world? Was it important to get together with others to practice Buddhism? I had a trepidation or maybe a mistrust of the group spiritual or the group religious. I think many of you or some of you either can identify with that or could identify with it at some point in your life. That group religious or group spiritual connoted to me this the sphere I had of being involved with groupthink, which then was synonymous to like prejudice and conformism and judgmentalism and up to the point of being cults. It seemed to me at the time, that it was really about me studying, about me learning and practicing the Dharma in my private little relationship with the Buddha while I sat on my cushion, which just goes to show you how I hadn't really incorporated the teachings, thinking any of this Buddhist practice was really about me, just me. So my experience being part of a Sangha proved to me how wrong my thinking was and exposed me to the jewel or treasure of that third jewel. I've had experience both virtual and real, and Sangha is the thing that came alive to me in my experience. And Sangha is the aliveness that is Buddhism. It's the aliveness that takes Buddhism beyond just a study or a philosophy to something that is applied, which is what the Buddha implied or intended all along. You know, I see a lot of comparison these days in Facebook and so forth to the philosophy. The philosophy is Stoicism or Stoic philosophy. And there are a lot of comparisons. But, you know, the difference between Buddhism and Stoicism, are there really a whole lot of alive groups, you know, practicing Stoicism? I mean, are there virtual or real in-person groups you can actually practice that, or is it more of a philosophy? You know, I've said this before in other podcast episodes. Buddhism is experiential, meaning if you don't practice it, it doesn't work. Sangha helps you try on and try out your practice, turning the concepts or the philosophy and ideas into part of your life. And more importantly, I think it's about keeping you honest, or keeping me honest, in my intention and your intention to apply the Dharma, to apply the teachings of the Buddha to life. You know, whenever we try to learn a new skill or discipline or change our habits, it helps to have someone who understands our intention, understands our commitment. It helps to have that person to keep us honest. You know, maybe you're extremely self-disciplined and you accomplish things quite easily alone through your own grit. But even then, how do you know you've really got it unless you rub up against the rough edges of someone else who can call you on your BS? You know, Thich Nhat Hanh says that in his tradition, people say, when a tiger leaves the mountain and goes to the lowland, it will be caught by humans and killed. When practitioners leave their Sangha, they will abandon their practice after a few months. I think that is so true. I have abandoned my practice, you know, in between being involved in a real life Sangha and being involved in the Bright Dawn virtual Sangha. It was so easy to drift out of practice, to even, you know, forget or that was an intention I had to begin with, to forget the Dharma, to forget the Four Noble Truths. There is another thing I learned about being part of a Sangha, and that is, even if I don't have a special role to play in the Sangha, my being part of one is an offering of support to the other members of the Sangha. I am there, offering whatever inspiration or positive motivation or even passive support I can, if it's even just a smile or a, I understand, I've been there too. To be totally honest, though, being in a Sangha brings you up against the very human things that can make you crazy. Or maybe I should say, make me crazy. These things like self-importance and selfishness, judgment, pettiness, emphasis on comfort, modeling doing it right all the time. These very things are reflections in a mirror. That is Sangha. Buddhist practice doesn't relieve us of being exactly who we are in all our human weaknesses. Remember the First Noble Truth. We will still feel sad. We will still feel depressed or confused or discouraged time and time again. But our practice lets us see that we are bigger than these experiences. Like clouds, they come and go and don't define who we are at our core. We learn to face our lives and our issues as they are, rather than denying or distracting. We become more honest with ourselves, and then that helps us be more honest with others. We accept ourselves as part of humanity. That is the taste of enlightenment that we can get, I think, only by being part of a Sangha. In a Sangha, we are regular people. In a Sangha, we come just as we are. We come working on practices, not being people who are already perfect. As the 18th century Japanese Zen master Hakuin wrote, quote, "As with water and ice, there is no ice without water. Apart from sentient beings, there are no Buddhas." I think there's another quote by another Zen master that I used to have up on my Facebook wallpaper that said, where you find Buddhas, you will find flies. Sanghas are needed for the very reason that much of our life revolves around the internet and virtual communications. So here I am trying to create a virtual Sangha for all of us. And yet I think in some ways it's interesting. It's like the anecdote to the distance that virtual communications have brought into our lives. These virtual communications have in large part become, public squares where people come to give their opinion on everything, not caring much about how other people feel or could possibly react to their opinion on everything. Social media and texting have created a culture where it's all about you. What you eat, what movies and TV you watch, what you read, what politician you love or hate, what policy you support or are against, what you believe you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, and what you therefore believe someone else should eat and what they shouldn't eat, and on and on and on, all you, all the time. And these media outlets are as close as the phone in your hand, so you can spout your opinions 24/7. And, if someone disagrees with you, the seeming standard in this internet life is to go on the defensive and attack. The disagreement is disembodied. Think about that. The disagreement is disembodied. We don't feel the other person on the other side of the issue as a person. It's just us and our screen. There is no other person over there. Just a problem for you spouting your opinion, causing you trouble. You may think I'm a Pollyanna. Or as John Lennon wrote, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. So I believe, as I think many of my Bright Dawn and everyday Buddhist friends believe, that using the powerful platform of internet technology and virtual video conferencing to create Sangha is a strong and real step to help heal the harmful divides and the prevailing sense of me versus other that seems to rule almost everything in our culture. Gyome Sensei said, world peace begins with Gasho. Sangha is Gasho. Gasho is recognition, gratitude, and respect for the other. And at its core, Gasho is a physical reminder that we are just like the other, with palms together. One hand is you, and the other is me. Kabun Shino Roshi wrote in Lion's Roar magazine, "In Gasho, with palms together, all kinds of dualism, man and woman, past and future, parent and child, teacher and student, they all come together in front of you as you bow. The hands fit together perfectly, so they must have been one before. Otherwise, such identical opposites could not exist. We may say man and woman were one before. Teacher and student are not different entities, but one. So they can feel like each other. They can feel each other, touch each other. A Gasho is like that." He continues to say, by being separated, you cannot feel the beginning place. When you touch your cheek, you feel, yes, it is a cheek. And it is a hand, both, as if from a blind state. This is both an intimate and independent practice, this life. In such a lost state, touching is very important. Being recognized by someone, recognizing someone without destroying the other, is a very, very important subject. A Gasho, you instinctively feel, is not just a Buddhist activity. It is before and beyond, and it feels good. And as that dreamer, I do feel as if Sangha is the collective expression of Gasho. As I said before, I have been fortunate enough to practice with both real-life, in-person Sanghas and with virtual Sanghas. Despite initial concerns and what others may think, participation in virtual Sangha is as deep and meaningful of a Sangha experience as in person. You know, the only thing missing is the smell of incense, the feeling of a body next to yours during meditation or chanting periods, and for me as a hugger, a warm hug when meeting or saying goodbye. My entire experience with the Bright Dawn Center of Oneness Buddhism, from ministry training through lay minister meetings to coordinating and teaching new classes, and with Bright Dawn's virtual public Sangha, Live Dharma Sunday, it's all been virtual. And less virtual in most cases than a video conference-based Sangha, as most Bright Dawn activities to date have been phone, Skype, internet, radio-based, audio-only participation. But this did not make the Sangha any less important or meaningful. The Bright Dawn Sangha has been my rock for more than 10 years. My Sangha, my spiritual community, is made up of many people, including my sensei, who have become cherished friends, advisors, teachers, and over the years, also people who have challenged or troubled me. But in those challenges, our rough edges initially rubbing shined a light on where I needed to go deeper in my practice, offering the practice itself of looking at where I needed to pause, where I needed to reflect and look at my own view, my own intent, and my own behavior. You know, the rough edges are there. They're on all of us. We rub into them all the time with everyone, our families, our friends, our coworkers. But unlike family, coworkers, and friends outside the Sangha, our Sangha is there for the same reason we are, to practice living aligned with Buddhist principles, with Buddhist worldview, and the Eightfold Path. In Sangha, our intention points us all in the same direction, at least initially. We may get lost, we may stumble, we may disagree on the right path to take us forward, but we are all pointed in the same direction, united in intention. Quote, intention charts the course of our whole being, Jack Kornfield tells us in his book, The Wise Heart, which, by the way, we are currently reading in our Everyday Buddhism book group. He says, quote, by aligning our dedication with our highest intention, we chart the course of our whole being. Then, no matter how hard the voyage and the setbacks, we know where we're headed. The Buddha emphasized that associating with what he called, quote, admirable people was essential to our success in practice. He defined admirable people as wise practitioners who are firm in their conviction that spiritual practice is important and are strong in virtue, generosity, and discernment. It is written in the Pali Sutra that talks about this like this. Venerable Ananda went to the Blessed One, and on arrival, having bowed down to the Blessed One, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, or the Buddha, this is half of the holy life, Lord. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie. The Buddha said, don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life. When a monk has admirable people as friends, companions, and comrades, he can be expected to develop and pursue the Noble Eightfold Path. And that is my goal for this Everyday Sangha. And that is, I think, the goal of every Sangha everywhere, to have help and help each other, support each other in following the Eightfold Path. The Everyday Sangha of Everyday Buddhism will help me support you and will help you support me. And together we will support all those in our immediate Everyday Sangha and in the Sangha we find with our families, friends, and co-workers. May it be so. That's it for today's special bonus episode. Thank you for joining me. So now that you learned more about Sangha, here is some more about our Everyday Sangha. We recently began a new study of the Way of the Bodhisattva by Shante Deva. The Sangha is a private, donation-supported group that meets virtually via Zoom every other week on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Our meetings consist of a service first, including traditional vow recitations and other invocations like refuge and bodhisattva vows, chanting, and a short meditation period. The service introduces a more ritual and liturgical aspect into the structure of our meeting, much like you would find at a non-virtual Buddhist temple, church, or Sangha. It includes a Dharma talk by one of the practice leaders or myself, and possibly a Dharma glimpse by one of our Sangha members. After the service, we open it up to discussion of the current book study or of anything that was inspired by one of the Dharma talks. Consider joining the Sangha at this time to be a part of this inspirational study and practice of the Way of the Bodhisattva, and also part of this warm and welcoming Sangha community. You can learn more about the Sangha by viewing the latest bonus YouTube podcast, actually recorded quite a bit ago, where me, Bradley Janayo Sensei, and Terry Zenkai Hoskin, our practice leaders, talk about what the Sangha and what Everyday Buddhism is all about. You can also support this podcast and the other activities of Everyday Buddhism by becoming a community member. If you do, you will have access to all members-only podcasts, an education series, the Introduction to Buddhism course, and a private group and forums on a non-Facebook platform. If you don't follow me or Everyday Buddhism on any social media platforms we post in, you can go to the Everyday Buddhism website and join the membership community or the Everyday Sangha. Go to www.everyday-buddhism.com and click on either the tab that says Join Members Community or Join Everyday Sangha. Or you can join through Patreon at patreon.com/everydaybuddhism. Links to joining the Everyday Sangha and the membership community are posted in the show notes. I thank all of you who contribute. This podcast, the community, the Sangha, everything depends on your donations to continue to exist. I don't seek podcast sponsors and do not ask for financial commitments through paid podcast memberships. So my work and the costs needed to support what I do is entirely self-funded except for your donations. Please consider a one-time or continuing donation through Patreon or on my website's Donate tab. Or you could buy me a coffee on the coffee cup link on the website. Again, you can find these links in the show notes. And thanks, too, to all of you who write in with comments and questions. I read your emails and may even pick your question to feature in a bonus podcast. Another way you can help, and this is important, is to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It's important to share the podcast with others if you find it helpful in your life. And if you could, take another minute to comment so people will know why you like Everyday Buddhism. That's all for the announcements, and so until next time, keep finding ways to make yours and everyone's days better.